Hi everyone, and welcome to Assessment 3 for Understanding Language and Literacy, EDU 1002. I think this is probably my favorite of the three assessments because it actually takes all that we've learned and make it real. So here we go. The purpose of Assessment 3 is to help you create a folio of resources on how culture and home language impact on literacy, learning, and teaching. We're interested in a collection of resources here for you to think about. So a folio where you're thinking about how does culture and the different languages in your classroom and the different backgrounds impact or affect the literacy, learning, and teaching that you're going to do. What is a folio? Well, it's a collection. For Assessment 3, your folio is a collection of writings. It's a newsletter article and an annotated list of instructional resources, all put together in a single Word document. The Word document has several pages. It has a cover page that tells us who you are and what the purpose is. There's a newsletter article, which is directed at families and parents, and a discussion of 5 annotated resources, concluding with a reference page. Simply, there are 2 parts to Assessment 3. First, you need to create an article for a newsletter. And second, you need to do some research to find some sources or resources that you could use about communities and teaching resources for your teaching classes all about including culture and language. So let's talk about the newsletter first. 800 words. What should it include? Well, first, it should explain the value of working in partnership with parents and families to support children's language and literacy learning. There's a value. It's not just we think it's a good idea, we have research behind it. Second, some specific examples of strategies that you could use. These are real-world examples to include the child's home languages and cultural backgrounds in literacy learning within your educational setting. Third, we want to make sure that in your newsletter article that you invite and encourage parents to be involved in their children's language and literacy learning, both at home and in the classroom. And last, that you offer some specific tips for them. How can they support literacy with everything that they do every single day within their home? They can do it if they just reflect a bit on making it conscious what they do right now unconsciously. A newsletter article, 800 words. So the first thing you need to do is to choose whether you're going to write your newsletter for your early childhood classroom, or now we're ready for you to think, are you going to be a primary school classroom teacher? Let's make it real and write for them. So first, choose your audience. Make sure that you think about what are these people interested in for an early childhood classroom, and what would a primary school classroom parent be interested in. Target your audience. Second, make sure that you recognize that the form or format of a school newsletter article is very different than that first essay that we wrote, and it's very different than the colleague presentation that you just completed. This particular article needs to target parents and families. It needs to be warm in both tone, it's friendly. It does invite the reader, that is the parents or the families, to understand what you're saying and to take action. It's not as formal in structure as an essay or report, but it does use proper language, and it doesn't use any I's or he's or me's, rather it uses the word student or parent. So it may not be as formal, but it does use third person. It has a simpler vocabulary than your essays and simpler sentence construction. We want to make sure that everyone understands. It's very important that you include some specific or relatable examples. We want to make it real to them. We want them to say, yeah, I'm talking about your child and your family. Sometimes it has pictures, but that's not a requirement for this portion of the assessment. So in your newsletter article, what do you need to talk about? Well, in your article, please talk about the value of working together. There's lots of research that we have in our unit readings, particularly in Chapter 10, that talks about how working together, how partnerships have value. It does have a positive effect on the child's literacy, development, and skills. It affects the children's attitude when they're in their classroom with you if you have a strong partnership with their family. And it opens up communication between you and the family, and that enables you to learn more. And the more you know, the more you can help that child. Second, the newsletter article has some specific strategies. What can you actually do? So you're going to talk about those. You're going to explain to the families how you're going to include home language and culture into your classroom. You're going to say you're going to put up some photographs perhaps, or some storybooks, either written in their language or with pictures about their culture. You may have some cultural objects in your room. You're going to try to explain to them what strategies that you would like to use, and obviously you're eliciting their help in achieving these strategies. Then you're going to ask them to be involved, both at home and in the classroom. You're going to suggest how they can help, some of the strategies for reading at home or what they can do, and in the classroom, how they can come in and offer communication to your students. They can exchange ideas and information. More details to come. So for example, if you want to give some specific tips, you would say, what can you do at home to support language development? Well, you can say to the parents, one of the ways that we can increase literacy is to read stories to your children, or to engage in as much oral communication as possible. When they go to check the mail, maybe you should read it out loud or talk about it. When you're writing grocery lists, they can see you actually writing, and you might want to read the words out loud. When you're passing a street sign and it says stop, say it, talk about it, we're stopping. Or if you're a family that does not particularly use lots of oral communication at dinner time, and your culture does not do this, what are the ways can you as a family support language development? So again, culture specific, but we're offering you tips and strategies to increase the child's oral language development and literacy skills. So let's review. You have a newsletter article. It's 800 words. There are 4 aspects to cover. The value, why it's valuable to both you and to them. What strategies you're going to include in terms of including culture and home language into your classroom instruction. You're going to invite them to be involved in the child's literacy and language development, both at home and in school. And you're going to offer some specific tips how they can support this relationship, this partnership at home as well as in school. So where do I get the answers for some of these? Well, in conversations with some of your mentor teachers if you are actually doing PRAC, but obviously the unit readings provide lots of help. Unit 10 in particular has lots of information by some 3 particular writings, one of them by Connor, one by Fellows and Oakley, which is our text, and Jones, Diaz, and Harvey. The Fellows and Oakley one talks about the implications and strategies, so please make sure you look at that one carefully. And the Connor one talks about the principles for working with parents, why we do what we do when we do it. The Australian curriculum has a section on student diversity. You might want to look at that. And lastly, the whole idea of bilingualism or multilingualism as cultural and linguistic capital. We can have value when we add all of this to our classroom. The second part of your task is to get some resources. They can be books and songs. Notice we're collecting resources all about communities, and we're also collecting teaching resources. So let's be specific. First, you need to have 2 community organizations that can be used to help integrate community and home language into academic classroom instruction. 2 specific community organizations. Which one are you going to choose, and why are you going to choose them, and how can they help you? Second, you need 3 specific teaching resources. How can 3 teaching resources be used to help you embed culture and language into learning? So, among these 5, you're going to say, these community organizations can help me, and these resources can help me, and I'm going to be a better classroom teacher because I understand how I can use resources to help improve my instruction. Where do I go again? Well, the unit readings have lots of ideas, but your own research. There's an e-newsletter called Collaborative Partnerships with Families. It's a newsletter, so that should give you some ideas what a newsletter looks like. And there are 2 other articles here as well. The Department of Education provides a project they're talking about of what they hope to achieve by having a partnership with families that are culturally and linguistically different. So the second part of your assessment, let me review. is how can two community organizations integrate home language and culture into classroom? And what 3 resources can you use? 2 organizations, 3 resources. The resource list, well, let's make sure you answer some of these questions when you're doing your writing. For each teaching and learning resource, provide a brief description and/or APA reference. Make sure you try to locate some books, some software, some music, some artwork, or even an object that would support literacy learning for children with diverse cultural backgrounds and home languages. What can you locate? And then, once you've identified it, how is this resource going to be used to support literacy teaching and learning for children with diverse cultural backgrounds and home languages? Last, please make sure that you provide for each organization the web or physical address and a brief description of the relevant services. So, for your resource list, you need 2 community organizations, 3 teacher resources, and you're going to explain what they are and how they can help support literacy, teaching, and learning for children with diverse cultural backgrounds and different home languages. The format of your presentation, well, it's a folio, but it has to be written in 3rd person. So we don't want first or second I's, or instead we want terms like student and teacher and parent. The folio must be properly referenced with in-text citations and a reference list using APA referencing style. We've talked about that a lot, so I'm sure you're more adept at it than you were in the beginning. The folio is made in a Word document, so there'll be a cover page, a newsletter article, an annotated resource list, and a reference page. Your folio is made up of these elements. Put it all together and make sure that you have in your writings addressed these criteria. This is our rubric. In your writings, you have shown that you understand the implications of cultural and home language for literacy learning. So implications, how does culture and home language impact literacy learning? Next, we're interested in the depth and breadth of the resources that you've chosen to support literacy learning. And last is your presentation, your written expression. Submission, well, it's due on 9 a.m. on Monday, September 28th in week 12. We ask that you please submit it through Turnitin, and the details of that is obviously in the Assessment 3 folder in Blackboard. It's at the end of our unit before we have to say au revoir or sayonara or taitien. Your UTutor checkmate or support for Assessment 3 can help you with this final task, so please take advantage of these services. As part of Swinburne Online's assessment support, you can use them, and you can submit a draft version of all your written work for the assessment tasks in this unit. Please log into your tutor through the Blackboard site for this unit and submit your paper for review by the checkmate tutors. It's written work only. Our criteria, well, I've told you you have a rubric. The first one is 40% for understanding of the implications of culture and home language. So, do you demonstrate a deep understanding of the implications of culture and home language? Do you show an emphasis on collaborative approaches and developing partnerships between the home and educational setting? Do you have strategies that are inclusive of children's home languages and cultural backgrounds? And have you explained those with examples? And have you provided tips for supporting literacy within everyday experiences, both within the home, that are both engaging and realistic? So, have you written a quality newsletter? And then for the second part, 20% for the depth and breadth of resources to support literacy learning. This is the section dealing with your 3 community organizations and, your 2 community organizations and your 3 teacher resources. Have you provided a wide range of resources that support partnerships for literacy learning for children and families with diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds? And have you demonstrated a sophisticated understanding about how each of these resources can enhance children's literacy learning? Have you said why they are valuable and how you're going to use them? Third and lastly, 40% is for the presentation and written expression. So please make sure that your writing is clear and cohesive and flows seamlessly throughout. Please give careful consideration of and respect for the target audience, particularly in your newsletter. There's a flawless use of APA referencing. There are no errors in spelling, punctuation, or grammar. You've had a friend or someone help you proofread this to make sure that it is the best quality work you can provide. So, do you have any questions? Well, go to your discussion board. Ask your ELA, ask your peers. Make sure that in your own mind you've unpacked the task, you understand how to complete it, and most often, please make sure that you offer your best work. This is the last assessment, so we're near the end of our journey. I want to make sure you keep the energy up with those candy bars until we reach our destination. And so as we close to the end, or we're getting close to the end, please know how important it is to understand language and literacy development, but mostly how the importance of working together with families and communities to help you achieve your goals. We will have celebrations to follow right after the assessments are over, so keep your eyes on your discussion boards for all those wonderful balloons. Thank you, and I hope you found this useful.